Denver pulls funding from an anti-homelessness initiative. Doesn't appear to line up with the new mayor's plan to put people in hotels.
My heart sank. I've never seen that happen.
The police department that can't find a permanent chief just lost the high-profile part-timer that they couldn't convince to stay. The work being done in our community to help migrants get to work legally. And fewer than 30 people in the world know as much about beer as this guy.
I would describe myself as a beer evangelist.
And tonight, he's preaching on Next. The city of Denver's intense focus on solving homelessness also means changing how Denver's been trying to do that. Meant a significant loss of funding for a program that gives people a safe place to sleep in their cars. Here's Mark Salinger.
In parking lots like these, cars serve as temporary homes.
Most of the folks we see are homeless for the first time.
For 4 years now, the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative has run lots on private land for people needing a place to stay in their cars. There's a bathroom, surveillance cameras, and most importantly, a sense of security.
So that you're not wandering the streets trying to find a place where you're going to be out of the way, because it's not legal anywhere in Denver to stay overnight in your vehicle.
Terrell Curtis runs the program. Last June, they were awarded $600,000 by the city of Denver to expand and help more people. 6 months later, in December, she says the newly elected Johnston administration told them they were taking $400,000 back.
My heart sank. I've never seen that happen.
The city of Denver won't say exactly how much or why the money was taken away or where the money was reallocated to. The city does say there have been concerns with spending and reporting once the money was given to the program. It's a concern that Terrell acknowledges.
As a startup, we were really slow in getting caught up with some of our billing and reporting requirements to the city. But they were aware of that all along. We worked together on what we were doing to address that issue, and while we were in the middle of that issue, they invited us to take another $600,000.
As Denver puts a huge focus on homelessness, safe parking lots offer an alternative to shelters or tiny homes.
We see people who can't access traditional shelter.
Without this money, a safe place to stay might be taken away.
These folks are going to be relegated back to the streets.
In 2022, Next viewers raised more than $100,000 for the nonprofit through a Word of Thanks campaign. The Safe Parking Initiative has lots in 5 of the 7 metro counties. They don't serve a huge number of people, only about 110 people every night. But for those people who need a temporary place to stay, to get back on their feet, these lot style are critical as an alternative to shelters.
We talked about that when we featured this organization, that they see themselves as playing a different role than the longer-term shelters. That these are for folks who might think that they're just like one paycheck away from making a deposit, getting back in a place.
Exactly. It's different people. Or think of people who want to stay with their pets, want to stay with their partners, or have a job, need to get to and from that job, can't drive halfway across town to get to the nearest shelter.
Mark, thank you. With everybody's attention on the brutal cold lately, advocates for people who are living on the streets hope that today was going to be the day that Denver agreed to stop sweeping encampments in sub-freezing temperatures. Then City Council pulled that vote from the agenda at the last minute. The advocates still rallied on the steps of the city-county building today anyway. They called on Denver to establish a rule against sub-freezing encampment sweeps. There'd be exceptions if there's a public safety risk or if they're in the right of way. Backers on City Council are holding off on this final vote while they make some changes to the wording. The idea has support from medical professionals who say that they frequently treat people who have severe frostbite after their tents and cold weather gear got thrown out during sweeps. Members of City Council who oppose the policy say that banning the sweeps would limit the city's ability to move people off the streets.
Sweeping people into freezing cold with nowhere to go can be a death sentence, a straight death sentence. And anybody who was out here in these last 3 days in these temperatures, I mean, if you've been out, you know how bad it is.
In fact, we believe the unintended consequences of this bill, if it is to pass, is that more folks will be on our streets and more folks will be likely to die on our streets.
So City Council's also holding off on a proposal that would open Denver's emergency warming shelters more often to offer them whenever temperatures are below freezing, as opposed to the current cutoff of 20 degrees. Now, it's been cold enough this week that 2 extra overflow shelter sites were opened, and the city's overnight shelters are going to be available through Friday. The Club Q mass murder, already serving life on state charges, is not going to face the death penalty in a federal trial. Anderson Aldrich has agreed to plead guilty to 50 federal hate crimes charges and avoid a death penalty trial. The shooter pleaded not guilty today, but court documents indicate that as a formality, and federal prosecutors have agreed not to seek the death penalty in return for a guilty plea. It will be life sentences upon life sentences for the killing of 5 people at that LGBTQ club in Colorado Springs in 2022. Does anyone want to be the chief of Aurora Police? That's a serious question because the department has not had a permanent chief since April of 2022. Now interim chief Art Acevedo is leaving. Came as a surprise this morning when APD suddenly said that Acevedo's decided to go back to Texas with his family. He was a high-profile hire in Aurora after some chief gigs in major cities, and Aurora's leaders had openly asked Acevedo to stay. The city was unable to find a permanent chief who wanted to take over that department under the scrutiny of a consent decree following the killing of Elijah McClain. Acevedo's been the man in charge of implementing that court order mandating changes in how Aurora police use force and interact with people of color. Today, Acevedo suggested the city should promote from within.
You're better off with going with who you have and what you know than what you don't have and what you don't know. Continuity of leadership is really important. We're on the right trajectory, and I think I challenge anybody here to say we're not.
Acevedo's last day, next Monday. APD's interim deputy chief, Heather Morris, is going to take over as the interim chief. The city manager said they are not yet starting a search for a new chief at this point. So the chief's not the only one headed for the exit at Aurora PD. One of the officers acquitted in the death of Elijah McClain has resigned less than 2 months after the department announced his return following that acquittal. Nathan Woodyard was eligible for $212,000 in back pay after a jury found him not guilty of reckless manslaughter. Woodyard was placed on restricted duty, so he wasn't out there in uniform, and he'd been on personal leave since his reinstatement. Migrants arriving in Denver often echo the same request. They want to work legally. Our Angeline McCall looks at the effort to get migrants through the first step in that process, obtaining a work permit.
Of the more than 37,000 migrants who have made it to Denver, at least 5,000 have stayed in Colorado, if not more. 5,000 who all want and need jobs.
We know that folks coming to our community want to work, and they're really eager to do that, and they want to do it legally if they can.
Sarah Kurz is with the Rose Community Foundation. So far, the organization has helped 215 migrants apply for work permits or temporary protected status.
So the people who applied in November and December are getting their applications approved now, which is really exciting.
The foundation is just starting to help migrants with this legal process, setting up legal clinics in the past couple of months, so Kurz says 215 and counting is a good start. The foundation initially expected to front the cost per application, $545.
The process that we've set up with the state of Colorado, the U.S. government has agreed to waive that fee because they're sure that the application is submitted correctly. So that's another reason we encourage people to go through this process if they can.
Even without that cost, the process is tough. 6 to 8 hours worth of paperwork for just one person.
One of the challenges is just the documentation needed before you can even apply for a work permit. Folks who have traveled for months to get here from Venezuela may have lost their documentation and their IDs along the way, or they may have been issued an ID in their country of origin that just isn't what's approved by the U.S. government for this kind of process. So we just need to give them this initial help to get them to apply, and then there are employers who want to put them to work and people who want to make a self-sufficient life for themselves here.
The government waived that fee because with the Rose Community Fund they're doing so many applications right now, and they can guarantee that there aren't any commonly made mistakes. And because nonprofits are also involved on the outreach on this, the organizations can vouch for how long someone has been in the country, and each migrant has to be in the country for a specific time period in order to become eligible for TPS or to receive a work permit.
We should note here, Next Viewers contributed to that effort through a recent Word of Thanks campaign to Rose Community Foundation's Newcomers Fund. And so, Angeline, when we talk to people about what's going on in the community with migrants, this is a legal pathway, but without help, it can often be an expensive pathway for folks whose other more immediate needs would be housing, clothing, food, diapers for a kid, something like that.
Oh yeah, I've talked to migrants who want to apply and they don't have the money to actually pay that $545 fee for just them. That's not, for a spouse or for a child. That would also be an expense too. And so it really adds up. And so that's when, when you think of someone, right, like waiving that fee as well for the fund, there's still 6 to 8 hours per person. So that's still a lot of money too on the legal costs just to have lawyers there and make sure that this goes through.
Sure. Angeline McCall, thank you very much.
Master Cicerone is just somebody that has achieved a near encyclopedic amount of beer knowledge.
In a state full of beer experts, that man is now in a league all of his own. And parts of Colorado have never felt as cold as they did this morning. After 86 straight hours with sub-zero wind chills, welcome to downright tropical feeling Denver right now. It's a bit of a bounce because we hit rock bottom cold, 19 degrees at DIA overnight. That ties the daily record, ties our second coldest temperature recorded in Denver since 1990. Record cold across the state, negative 27 in Fort Morgan, coldest temperature recorded there since 1984. Greeley and Lyman hit negative 29. Records are a bit fuzzy in Greeley, but it is definitely the coldest temperature recorded in Lyman since official records started in 1948. Silverthorne has been Colorado's crossroads during this winter storm, and it has the bare store shells to prove it. That's the target there in town. With Berthoud Pass closed, winter park traffic's been coming down through Silverthorne to get to I-70. It's also where people were waiting out closures last night and the night before. Corey Reppenhagen, we made the drive this morning from Breckenridge back to town, and it was a not-so-bad 4 hours. We heard horror stories of people trying to do it last night and faring far, far worse.
These polar vortexes can be a hassle for us out on the roads, but I also know that you had a good time in that snow out there in Breckenridge, too. So there is a good side to it and a bad side to it, and believe it or not, we got another one right on our doorstep here coming our way. This will be here in the morning, mostly impacting our mountains once again over the next couple of days. So that mountain travel is not going to get any easier. First, you'll notice the high winds. We have the high wind warning going in place tonight here. We could get some gusts here up to 75 miles per hour in our foothills and our mountains. So that'll be blowing the snow that's on the ground and the snow that's falling. So trouble is on the highways up there in the mountains. Here's the snow forecast. By tomorrow morning at sunrise, we'll already have some snow accumulation going, and that will continue all through the day Wednesday and into Thursday night. Mostly 3 to 6 more inches in the mountain towns, except for maybe Steamboat busting up over the single-digit total once again. Here in Denver, we may catch a couple of flurries on Thursday, but we're not expecting much in the way of actual accumulation down here in the city. Here's the 7-day forecast, the way it pans out here, and feast your eyes on this once again here. I'm calling this storm mini vortex or mini P because this is what it has in store for us on Friday morning, back down into the single digits. And Kyle, this may actually trend a little bit lower towards zero as more information comes in from that storm. So we'll keep an eye on that one for you.
Good to have you on next, Corey. Hey, Berthoud Pass still closed after this weekend's avalanche that caught up some cars. And in mountain towns all over the high country, you had people over the weekend furiously refreshing CDOT's website to see which routes home were open, which ones were closed. And plenty of people were also going on to one man's private websites for info. He set them up after seeing a need for more straightforward answers.
A lot of the Grand County Facebook groups were always asking what the conditions of the pass were and so forth, and nobody ever really liked the CDOT website. They could never find what they were looking for at that time. So it just kind of became a passion project for me.
Francis, who lives up in Leadville. Back in 2014, he got tired of wading through news reports, highway cameras, and that clunky CDOT site to figure out whether mountain highways were open or closed. So he convinced CDOT to turn over their real-time raw data on road conditions, and he turned it into a series of straightforward websites dedicated to answering a simple yes or no question about individual mountain passes. Is the pass open? Francis says his automated program pulls updates from CDOT every 2 minutes, and he uses that data coupled with eyewitness user reports to keep track of closures across 15 mountain passes and I-70. And he has them on separate sites like islovelandpassopen.com. Francis is a full-time web developer. He does this on the side. His websites are free. They're not cluttered with advertising. You just go there and it tells you, is the pass open? Francis says he's working to get them all set up in an app.
It was the most absurd experience of my life, mostly because nobody expects to pass this.
Very, very few people do. But now that he has, he can say he knows more about beer than just about anybody in the world. Cold as the Rockies. There are a lot of Coloradans who know a lot about beer. There is only one Coloradan who holds the world's most exclusive title reflecting an encyclopedic knowledge of beer, how it's made and how it's served.
I would describe myself as a beer evangelist. I really just want people to understand the amount of complexity and intricacies to the beverage. So we'll pour a Howdy beer here. Howdy is our American lager. My name's Patrick Holmes, and I'm a Master Cicerone. Man, a Master Cicerone is just somebody that has achieved a near encyclopedic amount of beer knowledge. Man, it's just the quintessential American lager. You get just a little bit of that crackery American two-row malted barley. In order to pass that exam, you really have to have a fundamental understanding of everything from beer history to shelf life science to draft beer quality and system design. So this is Prost's Winter Lager. In something like this, there's a lot of malt character on the aroma, right? I was studying anywhere between 30 and 45 hours a week. I was tasting between 48 and 64 beers a week. There's all these things that go into creating a beer style and reasons why beer styles evolved. And part of Master Cicerone is really understanding all of those elements and how they came together in order to birth those styles in the market. They gave me a call and they say, so how do you think you did? And you say, well, I think I did okay. Can I know if I passed or not? He said, yep, and that happens to be a passing score of 85. And congratulations. It was the most absurd experience of my life, mostly because nobody expects to pass this. I wish this was part of the test. It's not. You take it because the process in itself makes you a better professional in the industry. It's climbing the mountain in order to come out on the other side a changed person.
I've always wanted to do the slide thing. I've never had the confidence. Congrats to him, though. Hey, so Patrick's suggestion, if you want to get more into beer tasting, but like doing it at the brewery where you're like whatever seems intimidating, he suggested just grab like a mixed six-pack and somebody that you like drink beer with, crack some open, talk about what you like and don't like, and cheers. We'll have your feedback next. Grazie. All of tonight's feedback is about meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen. A text, loved Corey Reppenhagen doing the weather tonight. I'm hoping he is permanent. None of us is permanent. We are all just in various stages of impermanence, if that's the right word. I don't even know if that's the right word. John says, my girlfriend loves Corey Reppenhagen doing the weather. It's about time women get some eye candy. Please do not objectify that very, very handsome man and meteorologist. Jenny says, you let him on the show without a haiku? Corey was busy, so many newscasts to do. He is just one man.